providing quality leadership to all those who have placed their trust and confidence in them. Gracious God, may your blessings be upon our Mackay Regional Council as they serve our community. Bless them and their families with good health of soul, body, and mind. Always watch over their lives and keep them safe. We make this prayer through your only Son, our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father James. Appreciate you being here. There's nobody else on council business, so apologies, condolences. Council, with your leave, seek to offer our condolences to the family and friends of Sue Mitchell. Sue is a volunteer at Artspace Mackay for almost 10 years. A very active member of our local printmaking group, Print Bank Mackay. And she worked on the Fifth Lane mural project. She was a volunteer in our Speed Date, the collection event, which was a very successful event, celebrating our art space. She researched a lot of the artist books for that event, the whole collection. She's been a wonderful ambassador for art space. She had a lovely way of making people feel valued whenever they stepped into art space where she was volunteering. I think our staff and certainly her friends and family will remember Sue as a vivacious, passionate supporter of contemporary art in our community. So we offer our condolences to Sue's family and friends. Are there further condolences? No further condolences? Thanks very much. Any conflicts of interest to declare today? No conflicts, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the 27th of October. They've been circulated. Would somebody move that they be adopted, please? Councillor Green moves, Councillor Mann seconds. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Business arising out of those previous minutes are noted in the agenda items, and those agenda items are reported pages 5 through to 8 on the council agenda today. Right, we'll move on. There's no Merrill minutes. Consideration of the committee reports and recommendations. So the 10.1 is the minutes of the Northern Beaches Community Reference Group meeting of the 3rd of November. Are there questions around this? Any questions? Would somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So this was a combined meeting of the agency reference group with the community reference group, and we felt it important to bring the two groups together to go through the community consultation that had been undertaken by our officers over the last period of a few months. And I draw your attention to some of the key highlights of that community consultation. So the main findings from the consultation were the need for meeting rooms, flexible spaces, and community recreational spaces. The 4 principles for community consultation were discussed, and it was agreed that the Northern Beaches Community Hub should be an inclusive community space that reflects activity, reflectiveness and connectedness, a flexible space with diverse activities available, a responding to place, so a tropical place that is in touch with nature, so some nature play areas there as well, and sustainable, so social, environmental and economic sustainability. So these 4 principles inform the master plan design and that document going forward. And just like to note that accessibility and prioritising pedestrians was strongly considered in the design. And then further to that, a report will be presented to Council, adopting those outcomes from the community consultation, and Council will be presented with the updated master plan and design document. So that will come to us as soon as the officers have that ready. And then the process from there, Mr Mayor, is that we will correspond back with both the agencies and the community reference group in February, with a view when all of that documentation is finalised to actually pull the group back together again and give an update.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? For the motion, Councillor Green speaking
Just
for.
to add to that, that once it is endorsed by council, it will go up on Connecting Mackay, so the community can also view the master planning and design concepts there.
Great, thank you very much. It's a good working committee, that's very, very good with great results. So if there are no other speakers, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried, thank you. Correspondence and officers' reports 11.1.1 is the Office of the Mayor and CEO monthly report. CEO.
Thank you. So highlights for the month are our external funding for the year has got to 11.5 million, but the main contributor was 4.1 million from the federal government this month for the PDA. So that's really exciting. Combined with the 5 million from council, we're now out with tenders for the improvement of the public realm space down there. So that's a bit of a milestone for us. As well as that, we hosted the local Queensland Government Association here, the 125th year conference. That was very well run, very well attended. Lots of positive feedbacks, particularly from other CEOs, and credit to the MEC staff. Just sort of reinforces, whether it's the NRL or many other events, the ease at which people are able to interact with them and get conferences going really well. In relation to safety, no LTIs this month, which is great. 44 incidents, which sort of puts us back onto trend. We were at 28 last month, so it's a bit disappointing to go up, but that 44 does seem to be where we tend to be trending about. Of those incidents, nearly 10% of them, though, was members of public being aggressive or abusive towards staff as well. So that's disappointing to see. Other than that, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, CEO. Questions for the CEO? Questions for the CEO? I'd just like to point out, in terms of the report on the Regional Queensland Council of Mayors, the Regional Queensland Council of Mayors are meeting in Mosman during the month. They've appointed an executive officer. At the moment he's part-time, moving towards a full-time role in the next financial year, but Matthew Rowe lives in Brisbane and very, very keen to make a mark for the Regional Queensland councils that are represented now by the Council of Mayors and growing. So that was a very good result for the Regional Queensland Council of Mayors. There's no questions. Councillor May moves the report, seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I really wanted to highlight this month our Council and Community Day. It was a very good day where we got to travel around the region and view a lot of great projects, some that council are doing and some that are just happening in the community through development purposes. So we went to Slade Point to view the new construction of the boat ramp down there, as well as Lambert's Beach, the check-up on the shoreline erosion management that we put in place from the grant that we got from the government. We also visited the dunes while we were out that way, the dunes development there, and had a good conversation with the project managers and development representatives. We had a great information session with Thomas Borthwick and Sons, the abattoirs at Bakers Creek. I think there probably wouldn't be too many councillors that walked away that didn't learn something that day on the operations down there. And then we went to visit the Bakers Creek AFL Club, where we had provided them with a $7,500 grant to enable them to paint their clubhouse facilities. And then, of course, we finished off the day with a great celebration down at Anything Environmental, where they were celebrating 100 million containers being processed through the facility down there. So that's a lot of bottles and plastic bottles and glass bottles that have not gone to our landfill. I just want to make mention of the LGAQ conference that was hosted here in Mackay a couple of weeks ago. It was the 125th LGAQ conference, and it was a great opportunity to showcase Mackay. We had delegates from all over Queensland here. I think in total there was between 600 and 700 people attendance in Mackay. And all of Council's motions that we had formulated and passed through Council previously were all accepted and adopted by the meeting, which was a fantastic outcome for us as a council. And if I could just then really go to the funding part, and our CEO has mentioned the nearly $11.5 million, but I really wanted to draw attention to the $4.1 million that we have received for the Riverside Revitalisation Project from the Australian federal government. This will enable us to kickstart that public realm part down there in the PDA project. As we know, we've been working through the expressions of interest and the tenders, but picking up this funding and the rest of the funds we have in Council's budget, it's about a $10 million project, that will enable us to really set the scene for what will be a fantastic development going forward, and we hope that we can encourage that private enterprise to take up those opportunities. We also had the opportunity as part of the Greater Whitsunday Council of Mayors co-design working group to present the final report or take on the final report for the Suicide Prevention Task Force, and that will now become a public document when we did a bit of a launch at the LGAQ conference as well, so that can be circulated now to any interested parties. And I think just to draw attention to the Regional Council of Mayors, yourself hosted a breakfast for the Regional Council of Mayors while the LGAQ conference was being undertaken, where they had an opportunity to meet the Executive Officer, Matthew Rowe, and also to I suppose, to try and have that one-on-one networking discussions around some of the councils that may have been considering or not considering to be part of that. But I think if you look at the actual purpose of the Council of Mayors of representing regional Queensland and the mission to influence government policy to promote growth in regional Queensland through investment in infrastructure and social development, I don't see why there would be any council in regional Queensland that wouldn't want to be part of that. I think it's a great opportunity for us to be, and particularly if yourself leading that group of mayors, that we have a great opportunity to really put a focus on regional Queensland.
Thank you, Councillor May. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Mann speaking for.
Paul, thank you, yes. Look, I want to make mention of the LGAQ conference too, and a particular event that was on during that conference, and that was a networking event that was open to all conference attendees. And it was also the culmination of a Women Leading in Local Government project that Councillor May, Councillor Green, Councillor Hassan, Councillor Townsend and myself completed. But I was given the opportunity to talk about Better Together housing while we had all those women from different parts of the region, different parts of Queensland in the room. And Better Together housing is aiming to address the increasing housing stress for women over 55. And I felt that it was something that would be pertinent to every local government area in the region, so we were given the opportunity to talk about it. We do have a pilot program in our region funded by Greater Whitsunday Communities received funding for a pilot project, and it's just all about trying to connect people that are either in housing stress with people that may have a room that they wish to rent out to someone else. So it was a fantastic opportunity to talk about it, and I do need to make mention of the Deputy Mayor's welcome address. It was absolutely amazing. She gave us a virtual tour, and there was people saying they wanted to come live here based on what she said. So it was a fantastic event.
Thank you very much. Hope you get to their names and addresses. Other speakers? Thanks, Councillor Mann. Other speakers? No other speaker? Councillor Townsend speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to add to Councillor May's comments and Councillor Mann how much I enjoyed our community council and community day. And the biggest one for me was our new Animal Management Centre at Mount Bassett. That is an amazing accomplishment so far, and one that I believe our locals should be very proud of. And it's going to be a state-of-the-art housing for abandoned animals. My only concern is that their new surroundings may find them very reluctant to move into their new forever home. But it's a brilliant facility, and to see it rising out of the ground to this stage was, for me personally, awesome. And also I would like to give a shout out to Anything Environmental, as Councillor May mentioned. It was a huge eye-opener for me personally to go through there. And I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate the business owners, Jason and Joe, on the great work that they're doing. Their passion is for our community to recycle more rather than the waste going to landfill. And it did coincide, we were able to share some cake with them to celebrate their 100 million containers being processed. And I actually went on their internet, and I just would like to share a few facts. The energy saved by recycling just one plastic 2-litre bottle is enough to power a personal computer for about 25 minutes. There's other statistics there, I won't go into them, but that blew me out of the water. So I'd really like to encourage our community to start recycling. It's a great way for social clubs and not-for-profit organisations to earn a few dollars. And I encourage them to go there. And lastly, the great opportunity that was presented to me as a first-term councillor to attend the LGAQ. It was amazing. The seminars, the discussion groups was fantastic. And I learnt and grew a lot from that 3 days. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Townsend. Are there any other speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. 11.1.2, Council report for attendance of the Coast to Coast Conference from Councillor Jones. Thank you very much. A comprehensive report, Councillor Jones. In the interest of being totally accurate, I note on page 10 there was a comment that Mackay is 152 years old. Mackay's actually 159 years old last month.
Thank you. Point taken.
And perhaps before we enshrine it in the minutes, we might get rid of the spelling mistake on the last page. It was a handwritten field report or field trip, where field is spelled wrong. But apart from that, a comprehensive report. Are there questions around this report, Councillor Mann?
Yeah, just wondering what the strategic recommendations are to council in terms of the objectives and strategies and the linkage to the corporate planning.
Right. Are there? Can you answer that one, CEO? Or Councillor Jones, do you have a view on that?
I have got some speaking notes for when motions move, Your Worship, so I'm happy to.
So, okay, but the question was, what are the strategic links to the corporate plan?
Well, we have currently we have a coastal hazard adaptation strategy that's actually, that we're working through. And in my speaking notes, I refer to that in that I hope that what I saw and the things that I was exposed to at that conference will actually fit through that process.
Okay. That's in relation to what we're required to report back to council on. That's fine. Other questions?
Just one from me, Your Worship. Just in relation to the conference in summary, are those dot points formulated from what was actually said at the conference, or is that your take on, what was said basically?
Mostly what was said, and then I guess a couple of questions that were pointed towards council about maybe we could consider this, that, the other, that. So that was how it was formulated.
I just have concerns about some of the wording in there around the seawalls can buy us time, and we know from our own dealings with the department to implement a seawall in any shape or form is it's a huge task to get an approval to do that. So I'm just wondering sort of like where those facts actually sit, and the same with the erosion in the beaches area. We have one part of the report that says 70% of the world's coastline is eroding, and then here in Australia we're saying, that there's only 50% eroding, and the rest is stable. So, and I must say, I take offence to the wording. So this is a warning to managers and politicians to start planning for when such a recession will begin and avoid crisis management of coastal erosion hotspots that are occurring at present. There's an obligation for politicians now to care about the future and not about their election cycles. I think that is a highly inappropriate comment to be having in a report.
Unless, of course, it was said by somebody. So, and that's, I think, an indication of when you write a report to council, the referencing of whoever made that particular comment needs to be in the report. If you're reporting on a particular speaker to council, to the conference, that should be referenced. And I must admit, Councillor Jones, I struggle a little bit to delineate between your personal comments and what was actually said at the conference. So that's a learning for all reports back to council about. So what's actually said at the conference and how you report it to council, because you are reporting to council and trying to link it now to our corporate planning. But that may have been a comment by somebody. If it wasn't, it shouldn't be in there as a report to council.
I take your point that I should have referenced those comments, but every comment that you've just made, Councillor May, were direct wording that came from somebody that said those things at the conference. They are not my wording.
Okay.
And that's a learning. So just make a reference to that, and because it helps us then deal with whoever made those comments, and you can actually put it in context.
They may actually, Your Worship, be in my actual raw notes. So the referencing, if the wording is in my raw notes, then I've pulled it out of that particular professional person that was at the conference. I've pulled it out of there and created that. So yeah, there's always that opportunity to reference back. But if you really want me to do that, I'm happy to look into that.
For reference and to enshrine in the minutes, it would be good to have those sorts of references. This is what has been said by.
Yeah. I can do that.
Just for reporting sake, that would be good. Okay, there are other questions? No other questions? Councillor England.
I'm not sure of the process, Your Worship, but I have a feeling that the report may be voted down, so I was going to ask about a procedural motion, potentially lay the report on the table and give the council an opportunity to find the references.
Are you willing to rewrite it so to just put all those references in, Councillor Jones? That would make a better report to council.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
And then that gives the council then an opportunity to say, okay, well, these are organisations who are the people making those sorts of comments.
I probably need to make sure that we're not going to and fro, Your Worship, that like Councillor May has referenced 3 comments that she felt was either inappropriate or not unsure about whose it was, whether it was my comments or somebody else's. What others are there in there that you would like me to reference? So
I'm happy to give you my notes if you like, Councillor Jones. Yeah,
Sure.
There's only a couple of other points there.
I think it would make a better report because it's a comprehensive report, but it just needs to be referenced.
Happy to do that.
Okay, so do you want to withdraw it from this agenda and we'll put it on the next one? Because we can't adopt it as is. If that's the case, if you're going to rewrite it, we will have to adopt the rewritten version.
All right, no problem.
Okay. So we can lay it on the table until the next meeting.
No problem.
Because as I said, I think it is a comprehensive report. It assists me to understand who's actually making these comments, and then from a council's perspective, we can react.
I guess the only other point I have to make is that, council has had this report since Friday, and if that had been made aware to me prior to today, I potentially could have had that done and the report amended, and it wouldn't have had to have been laid on the table. That's my only comment.
Okay, taken. So we'll lay it on the table till next month.
Sure.
Somebody like to move that? Do you want to move that? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor England. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Capital Works for 11.2.1, the Capital Works Monthly Review Report for October 2021.
Thank you, Worship. Presenting the October report to Council. The month of October, no lost time injuries were recorded in the month, which is good to see. The year-to-date capital spend is around $33.3 million, which is a little bit below the forecast for that period. However, still trending okay given the delays we have on quite a few projects at the moment, and they're documented within the report. What is interesting, I looked back at October last year's report and I looked at the number, and it's about 23 million, so it's around 10 million more in terms of the capital spend, which is a good news story, I suppose, for this month and this time in the year, 4 months in. So that's a good indicator. There was 11 projects completed within the month. Again, not what we had anticipated originally. The original anticipation was around 20 projects. So there are some delays, but the good news there is all the delayed projects are not far away from completing, so a lot will be completed in November. So certainly within the financial year. We have also completed the draft report on the Capital Works review. So Council would know we've been doing a review of the capital program. We received a report from the consultants and started to distribute that amongst the people who are involved in contributing to the process. We're combining the feedback at the moment, and we're starting to talk about prioritisation and implementation of those recommendations, and we'll have that wrapped up, that process, pretty soon. Because we don't want to really detract from business as usual in our capital program delivery, we are setting up a project team to implement the changes or the recommendations that we adopt within that program. So we'll keep council updated on that, but that's where we're at with the review at the moment. And just, I suppose, to highlight also that we're currently tracking 718 projects that are either in business case phase, design phase or delivery. And again, comparing to October last year, it's about 108 projects more than the same time last year. So what that says to us is we're putting ourselves in a much better position for the future years to come. Obviously, design projects this year, most of which will roll into next year's program. And that number's quite a bit higher. So that is a good sign for the future delivery program. So, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Director. And at 94.8%, like you, we averaged last year, and yes, you're much better than last year at this time of the year. So it's very, very good. Questions for the Director, Councillor Bella?
I do have a couple, and I asked them in the light of the graph here and the numbers you quoted, which I think are outstanding. The graph in particular really highlights what goes on and the pressure that this department's under. The asphalt resurfacing, page 64 hard copy, 38%. Being delayed. My question is, are we likely to catch up there, and is this going to cause, the domino effect of pushing other projects back?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It is the 21-22 resurfacing program, and we are well ahead of that program. Obviously, that program is right through to June next year, and although 38% of the October delivery doesn't look good, they are certainly catching up on that program. So there's no issues with it being delivered within the financial year. It's just that they're behind where they were. If you remember this time last year, we were a long way behind on our resurface program and have caught up. So that's where we're at with that one.
The Wallen Street works, obviously, I think it's great that it's been done. It was a bit of an eyesore, and I think not only that, but we are depending upon the weather. If we do get any rain before completion, I know it will slow the project, but is it likely to in any way compromise what we've already done?
No, it shouldn't compromise what we've done in terms of the prep work there. We are in detailed conversations with the contractor about catching up that program. What they have done is send another crew up from down south, now that they've worked out their methodology. So the reason the Wallen Street drain's been slow from the beginning is they were using more traditional methods of forming and steeling up the concrete works on the lining. They've now gone to a spray method, and we've got approval to do alternative reinforcement via fibre. That's made the process a lot quicker. So although they haven't made great ground in terms of the amount of concrete they've got on that lining now, they've got a second crew starting on the 15th. And that's going to pick up very quickly. So we're confident that they're still actually going to get out of here by Christmas with the majority of that lining completed.
And finally, the Kamala water treatment plant works behind schedule, however, contractor exploring options. What exactly is behind schedule and why?
It's a fairly complex project at Kamala one, because there are two parts to it, and we added a second component by adding the tank, so the water storage facility to it. That complicated the contract a little bit, and also I suppose we had to make clear that the important part for us was to get the treatment plant underway and then focus on the second component. But they have been tied up with one design that's being produced that interlinks, because obviously the two pieces of work do interlink. So yeah, look, in short, they just haven't been able to get the materials on the ground. There are certain components that go into that treatment plant that they simply haven't been able to get and have had to source alternatives. The plant itself is not built on site, it's built off-site as a package plant and then dropped in, and that's been the main delay for that treatment plant being delivered.
Thank you.
We are working closely with them again to get the majority of that work complete before the Christmas break, or before December 31st, which is actually the deadline for our funding agreement.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. Thanks, Director. Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Sorry, Director, just following on from Councillor Bell in relation to the Wallen Street drain, I understand the fibre reinforced concrete on the sides. Does that also include the base, or is that still traditional to get? I'm more interested in relation to keeping a steady fall on that if you were just spraying concrete and not forming.
Director.
On the base.
Yeah,
keep
I know what you're asking. I don't know the answer to the question 100%. I don't know if they've just gone to spray crete on the walls and they're still forming the base. So I can take that on notice and get back to them.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I just noted, and my apologies, my numbering's changed from my hard copy, so apologies to Pam for my numbering being wrong. Page 66 of Diane Street will be receiving a new playground, and it's great that it's been themed in the emergency services. It's a great idea. But, and I also note that they're getting the new softball. It talks about weather permitting and the project starting in November and through to December. So I'm just wanting to double check, because we do have all of these labour procurement issues happening in our town. Is it going to be completed by December?
Director.
I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have much more information about that particular piece of work other than what's in the report. So it does say starting early November, but it also says tendering process. So I'll check on that one and get back to you.
Thanks, Director.
And a second one, Your Worship,
Yes.
the same on page 76, Paradise George Street. I note that it says that the works had slipped behind, and I'm assuming the reasons are for the rework that had to occur, but again, I'm just wondering whether or not there was other reasons, such as the labour and procurement issues, that caused that slip behind in.
Director.
Yeah, look, generally speaking, there was a little bit of delay early in the project, but nothing that the contractor thought they couldn't overcome in terms of the overall program. But when the rework had to be done on the base and pavement material that went in through what was the old park area, that certainly delayed the project significantly, and that's been the overall delay towards the end of the project. So they are very close to completion now.
Lovely. Thanks, Your Worship.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Bonaventura.
Yes, Your Worship. The Juliet Street pavement rehabilitation between Evan and Boddington Street. During construction, I noticed we appeared to go down a fair way to get a good solid bottom. I'm pretty pleased about that, because it will give us a good life expectancy of the road. Just want to know, are we still within the budget on that road?
Director.
Yeah, so overall, we're expecting that to come in a bit over right now as we see it, but we haven't gone through all the assessment of the variations that are coming in from the contractor around that unsuitable material. So we're not expecting it to be a large percentage of the overall budget that it's over, but I can't say a lot about where we're at with that, because we're assessing claims and working out who's responsible for which part. You're right about the depth of the subgrade. We took a lot of unsuitable material out of that particular location, a lot more than what was anticipated in terms of replacing unsuitable subgrade. So that particular item, for example, we did put a lot more material back in there to get a stable base before we could put in the pavement design.
You know, Councillor Bonaventura.
Yes, please. Just the Glenalla Richmond Road rehab. I noticed that we've now put a forecast completion date to the end of February, when we had said we're going to be finished by December. We've had good weather, Your Worship. I was just wondering if the Director can tell me what's led to these expected delays.
Director.
Yeah, look, we had a little bit of unsuitable material early in the project, but again, a bit like Paradise Street, I would suggest that that wasn't the reason that it affected the overall program. The majority of the reason has been a shortage in resources for us in our field services teams. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like, we're at almost 20% vacancy rate in our field services team. So we don't have the people on site or the number of crews on site that we would like, and we simply can't fill those roles. And to further that, we can't fill all the roles with labour hire, or because some of the roles that we're missing on site are specialised final trim grader operators and other plant operators like that. So we're simply having to reprioritise that work, and I can assure Council we are re-looking at that all the time in terms of that mix of field services delivered work and the contractor delivered work. And that will have an effect on what our field services teams can deliver in the second half of the year. We have to push some other projects now out to contract. So the flow on for Glenella is that, yes, we're not going to finish by December like we had hoped, and therefore we're at a point where we need to actually make a decision about whether we reopen it over Christmas, which we could potentially do, but then close it again for 5 or 6 weeks in the new year through to that end of Feb deadline to finish the work. So we're working through those different scenarios at the moment and the benefits of those.
Councillor Bonner.
Yes, just I'm happy with the explanation there. Just in relation to the VMR boards, which I drive past every day, that says, you know, closed August to December. Just I'll let the director decide which way they're going to go, but we need to advise the public at some stage and not, you know, when they come through.
We will be as soon as we make that decision.
Okay,
sounds
good.
Yeah,
So,
good point.
The director's explanation leads me to another question, and that is in relation to our shortages. How is that going to affect our delivery of the rest of our capital work budget by the 30th of June next year? I just, that really did frighten me, your words then. I don't doubt that that's our issue, but I'm worried about that effect, Your Worship.
Yep, that's a good question. So I'm sure that's being applied every day in all directors.
As I said, it's a problem that's more global than our little issue here, but it is something we're continually reviewing about how we are going to deliver those projects. So there is a prioritisation process that happens there, but also, as I said, we've just had a look at Glenella, Richmond, and also the St John Street boat ramp job. Both of those are behind. Both of those are lacking resources on site from our field services teams. And the flow on there is there's a few small roads jobs and drainage jobs that our field services teams won't get to in the new year, and we're planning to. Those will go out to contract now. So that's what we're put in place. So the answer to that is we're planning for there to be no adverse effect on the delivery of the program, because that will go out to tender.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship.
Further questions? No further questions? Thanks, Director. Would somebody like to move the reports of adoption? Councillor Anglett moves, second by Councillor Jones. Councillor Anglett.
Thank you, Worship. As the Director mentioned, no lost time injuries, 11 projects completed, and the review of the Capital Works program is in draft and would be submitted for review. Variances are as a result of ongoing resource procurement issues, wet weather events and poor ground conditions. Kamala has been talked about during this process. I'll move on to Yucca Seaforth Shed Path, stages 2 and 3, a $1.6 million project. It's nearing completion with a couple of additional parts to be added to that as a result of some ground issues and lack of materials, but I'm sure that that's happening very soon. And the pictures in the report demonstrate the quality of the project. It's outstanding work, in my opinion. Pioneer River North Bank Path, Stage 1, which is a project to link major residential areas, commercial precinct, parks, recreational areas, principal activity centres, hospitals, and the CBD over the next few years. That's been started, and that's a really good project for the future. And as mentioned, Council and Community went out to Seagull Boat Ramp. There has been some delays on that with regards to the marine works due to rain and tides, but I'm certain that that will be addressed very shortly. And overall, a very busy and well done report. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anglett. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Green, speaking for.
Just one thing, I always like to mention what's going on in the sport and recreation infrastructure space, and really pleasing to see further stages of Northland Park. You know, this is a catchment with a lot of children, and it's really great to see that on the back of such a successful update of the playground there, we've now got a full-size basketball court to be installed, which will complement those recent works. So we've got some great facilities now for the youth in the area, not just for the younger children. And the improvement works also include new lighting of the basketball court, footpaths, additional safety fencing, and landscaping in the area adjacent to the children's playground. So I know that community will really enjoy those facilities, as well as the wider community that I know travel from outside of that catchment to come to this fantastic space. So that's great news.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Community and Client Services Monthly Review for October 2021. Director.
Thank you, Worship. So October was a month of celebration and really strong engagement with our community across the region. Our Get Active campaign Try the 5 ran during the month with 37 really well attended sessions. The annual Seniors Expo was also held at the showgrounds, and we had 2,500 community members in attendance there. Global Groups was also very successful. We had more than 7,000 people coming together for this important multicultural festival, with many claiming it to be the best one to date. The Met also hosted part 2 of a very successful Esteemed campaign this year, along with the largest conference we've held in our region since COVID hit, which others have already mentioned, the LGAQ conference this year, with almost 700 delegates in attendance. Community consultation to help shape Council's vision for the next 5 years also kicked off during October, and we provide through this the opportunity for residents to have their say through a variety of mechanisms, online and in person at libraries across the region, as well as at key events throughout the month. During October, our local laws team were able to complete 53 proactive animal patrols across the region. And during these, more than 90% of pet owners that were observed displaying responsible pet ownership behaviours, which was a great outcome and really highlights the positive impacts of our ongoing messaging in this space. We've also had a great outcome in our pest management area with the successful completion of this year's fox project. This has removed somewhere in the order of 25 to 55 foxes from across our region. During October, we were able to make contributions to many community organisations, with almost $190,000 in community grants being provided to 23 not-for-profit groups in our locality. Another 14 local not-for-profit organisations were also awarded a Christmas grant, which will help them to fund Christmas activities for the community over the coming couple of months. We also have some big congratulations to pass on to our people for receiving awards during the month. Through the work done by our emergency management team, we were announced joint winner of the local government category of the Resilient Australia Queensland Award for our person-centred emergency preparedness project. The Met also won the Business Events Venue Gold at the 2021 Mackay Tourism Awards. And we also had 54 of our dedicated Mackay Region SES volunteers receive awards for their service during SES Week during the month of October. And I know that it meant a lot to our volunteers to have the Deputy Mayor and several other councillors in attendance at that event. Finally, our Get Ready Mackay campaign ran during the month, encouraging residents to prepare themselves for the severe weather season, which has now officially commenced. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director on the report? Councillor Ballard.
Page 135, illegal dumping and littering. Volume of waste 2021. I've got a couple of questions relating to that. Firstly, the volume or litres of waste dumped each month. Is that assessed on when we see it hit the ground or when we actually have it cleaned up?
Director.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is based on the requests we receive.
Sure. The next question I'd like to pose is that the graph is up and down, to say the least. January and July, a massive amount. Are there any trends, any indicators as to why we're up, down? Any enlightenment in that regard?
Director.
Thank you, Worship. Of recent months, the reason why I would suggest that we've seen such a drop-off through the months would be because of our resourcing within this space. So we did have a dedicated illegal dumping officer with council that was grant funded, and we actually received funding through council to carry that position forwards into this new financial year, but we had to go through a recruitment process for that. And we've only just recently, in the last few weeks, appointed a new illegal dumping officer. So during that time where we didn't have a person dedicated to the function, it was spread throughout the rest of our environmental health officer team. So now we will see those numbers come back up again as we have that dedicated focus reapplied.
Director, the question mainly around, are there any identifiable trends in the waste that's dumped and the areas that it's dumped in?
There are absolutely key hotspots that our officers are aware of that we do monitor more regularly than others, but where the community will provide feedback to us on new dumping areas, they just become added to our list and we'll monitor them ongoing as well. But there's still a few key hotspots that we'll always go back to.
Final question. Once again, as I did with the previous department, congratulations. I will speak on this graph here. I think it's outstanding. But when we look at a Department of Environment now, I would say that there's a considerable amount of state land that is the recipient of illegal dumping. I see that the Department of the Environment, the state body, is minuscule in cleaning up, or the representation in cleaning up said areas. Council, landowners and other, I assume that's our clean-up days, accounting for almost half. Do you think that the state bodies are taking this seriously? Do you feel that they're holding their end of the bargain up on this, or is it just being offloaded to private landholders, private citizens that volunteer, and council?
Director,
A tricky question. I don't think we're seeing any shirking of responsibility in this area. Certainly when we liaise with the state for areas that would fall within their responsibility, we feel that they hear us, they take us seriously and they take action, but predominantly the areas where we're finding waste to be cleaned up, it is falling within the other categories. There's always more to be done, but it is a relationship that we work hard to maintain.
Excellent.
right. Well said, Director, that's very good. Because we know where we can go with that one. Okay, so are there further questions? No further questions? Thank you. Would somebody like to move the reports on to Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Jones? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you to the Director for a very comprehensive report which highlights the varied and well-attended programs made available for our community during the month of October. And I'd just like to highlight a couple of those. Carers Week, which highlighted the vital role our carers play within our community, and was celebrated by a Carers Walk at the Botanical Gardens on the 14th of October. Seniors Expo has been mentioned. I visited on the day, and I was very impressed with not only the attendees, or the number, but also those that had displays around there. I was able to look at what I might be using in another 10, 15, 20 years. Global Groups was an amazing success, and Mackay definitely came out to celebrate our multicultural groups who reside in our wonderful community. Our sporting enthusiasts were also catered for, and we saw approximately 184 registered participants for the Ride to Work Day. Now, I have to admit I was slack and I didn't partake of the ride, but I did go to the harbour and greet some of the riders that were there at Cashew Jacks and joined with them in a hearty coffee to celebrate their achievement. Pleasing to see our local museums have welcomed approximately 164 visitors to our museums across the region, and I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our volunteers who gave almost 180 hours of their valuable time to meet and greet our visitors to our much loved museums. Their time and passion for our museums is invaluable, and we could not successfully keep our museums open without their continued support. Community grants has been mentioned, and we saw approximately, as our Director said, 187,956 being donated to worthy not-for-profit organisations. These funds are invaluable to these organisations within our community who often don't have the funds required to either complete upgrades to their buildings or purchase much needed equipment. Christmas grants attracted 28 applications, and we've been granted approximately $10,000 to our not-for-profit organisations. And I'd like to also highlight here the in-kind assistance Council provided to 15 organisations, which included providing 139 general waste bins. I attended one of these events, which was the West Mackay Rotary Club, and they actually raised an all-time record amount of money for their annual Christmas fair, and that will be distributed to worthy charities over the coming months. And it was also good to see that Council supported the mastocytosis Society, which is a rare condition that affects mostly children, and the admin building was lit up in purple to acknowledge. Art Space welcomed over 7,000 visitors in October who enjoyed amazing artworks by some of our very own local artists, including Tracy Robb. I'd also like to highlight the MEC, which our Director did. We received a lot of positive feedback from events that were held over there. But it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our caterers, who catered for many events and functions both on-site and off-site, including over 600 delegates to the LGAQ conference. Our operations team had an extremely busy and successful month in October, which included a 16-day run for the Mackay Stedford and 3 days LGAQ conference. And our technical services team provided the MEC, proved that the MEC is capable of meeting the needs of events of all sizes and requirements, which positions our region well to attract large-scale events that will benefit our local community. So thank you again, Director. It was great reading and it highlighted for me a lot of great activities in our community.
Thanks, Councillor Townsend. Are there other speakers? Councillor Jones, speaking for.
Thank you, Worship. I just have 2 items to mention out of the Community Services Report for the last month. Page 100, I wanted to talk about the community grants and just say that while the grants are not actually assessed in this way, I looked at it from another perspective. So community grants were certainly spread across the region. We've mentioned the number of not falling too short of $190,000 for this last round. But the breakdown for me was this. Generally, Mackay, the general area of Mackay received 30 projects. The south of Mackay, so all the way down to Kamala, there were 8 projects that we approved. West of Mackay, so Eaton, there was 1 project approved out there. And then when we head up the valley, there were 7 projects up the valley. And finally, the east coast, so basically Havana, Seaforth, right up to Midge Point, there are another 6 projects that were approved in the region. So it was great to see that there was just a widespread across. Also on page 122, on community engagement, I note that this past month we've had 15 items up for grabs for the community to connect with us about on our website. 4 topics were about water-related topics. There were 4 topics that were road-related. There were 2 planning projects that were there for consultation, and there were 2 footpath projects. But I guess the sexier projects that the community like to hear about are things like security upgrades for boat ramps and the Riverside Revitalisation Project. Thank you, Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mann, speaking for.
Speaking for, Worship. I go on to make mention of an item in the museum section of the report, and that is the retirement of Carmel Kelly from Pioneer Valley Museum. Carmel's been instrumental in the operations of the museum and also the management of the collection, and has donated countless hours to that museum, including driving from Mackay to open and man the museum. She was also instrumental in the clean-up after the disastrous, rainfall event in 2019, where the museum did receive some water damage. So Carmel led that team in cleaning up, including mould and resorting the collection so it could reopen. And that was a massive body of work. As we know, we can't do a lot of what we do without our volunteers, and I just think Carmel's contribution to this council and to our community in what we're trying to achieve in telling our stories from the past is invaluable, and I wish her the very best.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mann. Are there other speakers? Councillor Seymour, speaking for.
Your Worship, I was on the Grants Committee, and we were just talking the other day in Council catch up about the zombie walk. When this first came up for assessment, I couldn't. I had to get my head around what the zombie walk was all about. But it's set up for autism in children and that, and I didn't really understand autism so much, so I researched it a bit, and I found out that current estimates reveal 1 in 88 children will develop autism, and 4 times prevalent in males and females. So hopefully Zombie Organiser and Council can strike up a partnership for future events on a yearly basis.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Seymour. Councillor Bella, speaking for.
I have a couple of things I'd like to say, a couple of different subjects, but firstly I'd like once again to congratulate the Director and her department on the graph here regarding illegal waste. I think there's nothing better than a visual depiction of how we're going, and I would now say to the Council itself, something such as this would be very handy in an advertising campaign against illegal waste to show from two aspects. It shows the general populace that we're getting 1 in 3 of illegal dumpers and they're having to clean up after themselves. The other section shows just how much cost to council for us to clean up that other third. And from the other aspect, once again, it shows potential offenders that there are 1 in 3 chance not only of getting caught and fined, but also having to clean up after themselves. And time spent on site cleaning that up where people can see them and that sort of thing, or have the potential to see them is, I believe, it's got that name and shame aspect, which is quite good. The other thing I'd like to speak about, I remember a few years ago when I first brought up I often speak on pests, and I often speak from a landholder's point of view. I spoke about foxes, and I recall some sort of sniggers and that, about that sort of thing, from a number of different areas. And it was only about 12 months later when any number of chickens were killed, some of show quality, at one of our beach areas, that it was starting to be taken seriously by the council itself. To account for 25 to 55 foxes not only is great work, but it also shows how many are getting around. The problem has definitely escalated, which leads me to my next section. This is definitely not from a landholder's point of view. I think one of the most overlooked pests that we've got and one of the most damaging are feral cats. I've spoken about it once before in the previous term. I believe as a council we should approach this as some sort of strategy. It's said time and again how devastating they are to a natural environment. We're portraying ourselves in that light from a tourism point of view. I mentioned wild dogs, and really it only hit home when some of our what would you say, advertising stars on the beach up there got killed by wild dogs that was taken seriously. Cats are increasing. I've got to say that I humanely euthanize quite a number that I find on my block within our area. I think it's something we should approach, and it's not just feral animals. There are also roaming domesticated animals, and I believe that we should have a trapping program of some sort. Domesticated ones that are roaming can be returned to their owner if registered, with a small education program on responsible pet ownership. Feral ones can be dealt with appropriately. I think this would be of great value to our region and contrasts everything. I mean, the black highlights the white and the white the black, and you can assign colours as you prefer. But what I'd like to say is the fact that there are these cats getting around killing our native animals, any number of them, you name the genus, they're getting slaughtered. But we've got a large, I believe the white, this is my personal opinion, is our large number of responsible pet owners, cat owners, that actually register their cats, keep them indoors at night, and that sort of thing. So I'd like to congratulate those people. I think that they are making a positive contribution, but we've got to deal with the negative, and we've got to start doing it very shortly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ballard. I must admit the 25 to 55 foxes was a bit of an eye-opener for me too, so that was very good. Are there further speakers? Councillor May, speaking for.
Just very quickly, Your Worship, I would like to highlight the SES, the medals that were handed out on the day, and you read the report there, and we've got service medals from people that have done 10 years service right up to 45 years service, and that is an amazing contribution to our community in a volunteer basis. And normally when the chips are down, you know, like when we call upon our SES when the times are tough, and they deliver for us day in, day out. So I just really wanted to draw attention to that. Also, the person-centred emergency plans. I think we're leading the way in the work that we've done as a council, hence we won the award, but we are leading the way, and the way we've gone about that, engaging the not-for-profit groups, engaging individuals to be able to work with people to get those plans in place. Hopefully that will be a good thing if disaster strikes again. And just really to draw attention to the Youngler and Fitch Hatton creative recovery works as well. they were finalists in their category in that particular part. And the great work, and I think the good that comes out of working with a group and working with individuals in the arts form really enhances people's recovery and connectedness to their community. So I really wanted to draw attention to that. And lastly, I wanted to say a big congratulations to our comms team who have produced the video Discover Mackay. We have been running for many, many years now the Mackay Pride video, and what a timely update to actually launch at the LGAQ conference. So to Mark and his team, I think they hit the spot really well, and well done.
Yeah. Councillor Green speaking for.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to draw attention to the ongoing community consultation for the corporate plan. So the corporate plan is a 5-year document, which is the most important strategic plan of this organisation, and so it's up for the next 5 years. We've been doing a lot of internal work, but it's now the time for the community to add to that. And congratulations to Council's community engagement team. Literally any chance that there is to have a pop-up stall to get the community's feedback on where they see our region in 5 years, over the next 5 years. So it's an aspirational document that tells the unique story about our region, our wonderful region. So please contribute. They're in our libraries. You'll see them popping up at they're at Global Grooves, at Canelands recently, and it is also on Connecting Mackay. And I know our community engagement staff are really excited about some new technology that we're trialling in this space in regards to getting your feedback with a texting into an ideas wall on Connecting Mackay. So appealing to all of our residents to give your feedback and tell us what you see as a future for Mackay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Are there other speakers? Councillor England speaking for.
Thank you, Richard. I want to thank the Deputy Mayor for bringing to attention the fact that the SES had their SES Week Awards last month. In 2008, Mackay Regional Council significantly increased its funding to the SES with the hope of being able to better defend its communities, and sometimes it's hard to work out what the return on investment might be, and this isn't the best way of doing it. It might go some way to explaining, what that's produced in the meantime. Paul Kelly, who we all know as an individual that worked with Mackay Regional Council for some time and was leader of the Navy Cadets for the exact same number of years as his service to the SES. 45 years he's stayed with our communities, defending them over all that time. Additional medals given out of the Meritorious Service Medal, which is for 10 years service. So 5 of those were given out to volunteers for the first time. 2 accepted their 15-year class. 2 accepted their 20. 1 accepted their 25-year class. 2 accepted their 30. 1 accepted their 35-year class, and Paul got his 45-year class with the Meritorious Service Medal as well. That's 280 years of service right there. In 2011, the National Emergency Medal was formed, and in 2012 there are less than 150 of them in the country, of which Mackay Regional Unit possessed 11 of those. It's given for sustained service during a nationally significant emergency, or to the other persons who rendered significant service in response to such emergencies. And on this day, 26 medals were given to volunteers in the Mackay Regional Unit for their service during Cyclone Debbie, and another 10 of them were given to volunteers for the North Queensland events in 2019. So that's 47 of those medals now possessed by the Mackay Regional Unit over the last 10 years. And it just demonstrates to me that, I personally think as a result of the increased interest the Mackay Regional's had over the last 3 terms, that they are producing solid volunteers who are well experienced, well deployed, and puts us in the best stance to into the future to protect our communities. So thank you.
Much, Councillor England. Are there any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. 11.3.2 is the adoption of the 2020-2021 annual report. Before we consider that, we have Mr. Begg in the public gallery wants to speak to that report. Mr. Begg, I think you know the rules of engagement, so
No
3 minutes are yours.
Yeah, Clinton Beck, 13 Borough Drive, Beaconsfield, Mackay. Just before I talk about the annual report, talking about corrections, today's meeting, which held the annual report, wasn't updated on the council website till yesterday. The annual report and the meeting minutes had the wrong date on it, so that was corrected yesterday as well. So this is a matter of correction and spelling. One of the things I want to talk about in regards to the report, there's a few things I want to quickly talk about. Previously, since I've been here, I spoke at one of my last meetings that I attended about boat ramps, and it's really interesting to see that the boat ramps around the Mackay area. I know that there was a motion at the LGAQ conference in regards to boat ramps. Great to see that there's 28 boat ramps in the region, of which council owns 11, and 17 owned by Department TMR, I guess that is correct. And I suppose that's also maintained. The other thing that I want to quickly talk about in regards to that is accessibility to anglers. So Councillor Alison Jones obviously is a very keen push in regards to fishing and fishing spots around the region, and I commend her on that because it is recreational. Mark Sleeman with his great video features fishermen in that video as well. So river to reef is something that is very, very important in regards to boat ramps and sustainability. And I think I mentioned that in my last meeting, as quoted, we can't have councillors skimping on that type of thing. Community grants is also very interesting. Nearly $556,000 in community grants handed out to varying organisations around the region, which is heavy in here in regards to sport. But I think you've got to be very careful that you don't go over into the Queensland government and also the federal government space when it comes to grants and handing out grants. Yes, whilst they're fantastic, the Queensland government have actually changed their criteria around grants and for not-for-profit. So that's probably something to keep a keen eye on. The other thing that I want to quickly acknowledge as well, my stalling here. Council and community went out to the dunes to look at that particular development, but we've now pulled back on patrols at the Mackay Harbour. Now, one would suspect that if there's a development in that particular space, that there would be a lot more foot traffic on that beach, and that beach will actually be utilised a lot more with that development. So whilst it's great growing and thinking that the dunes is a great development for councillors, there is no one to patrol the beach. You've broken it back down to weekends, school holidays, etc. So that sounds a little bit, in this report, sounds quite contradictory to me. The other thing too is the working relationship here in regards to the Riverside revitalisation. I often go for a walk down Cathy Freeman Walk, a project by the late Greg Sutherland. It's very, very interesting to see with that particular area the maintenance side of things, or the ill maintenance. So it would be great that with the Riverside revitalisation, as part of this annual report, is that existing infrastructure that we have and promoted is taken care of.
Thanks, Mr. Begg. You've just gone over 3 minutes now, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the annual report has been circulated, councillors. Ask the Director, Angela Hayes, would you like to speak to the report first before we ask for questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to highlight that Mackay Regional Council's annual report for 2021 has been compiled and produced completely in-house by our corporate communications and marketing team, which has been a lot of work and a fantastic effort from them. But it has been done with huge collaboration and cooperation from all council departments. It's also good to note that while it provides the usual detailed synopsis of how we fared during the year, there's a couple of extra additions this year which actually enhance the readability of the annual report. So we now have the year in review section and major project sections, which are right up front and provide a really nice summary view of just the degree of work that's been done throughout the year. Otherwise, I'm happy to present it for consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there questions on the annual report? No questions. No compliments to your department and particularly the Corp Comms for the presentation of the report. It looks very, very good and very professional. So if there's no questions on the report, I'll ask somebody to move the report. Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And yes, it is a very comprehensive report, and way too much in there to speak about everything, but I thought I would just draw out a few highlights for myself. In the report, we see that we managed an expenditure budget of $298 million, delivered $88 million worth of capital works, reduced our borrowings by $15.2 million, and also had the special COVID community grant of $900,000 to assist our not-for-profit organisations through that particularly hard time. And we didn't just assist our not-for-profit organisations, we put $7 million worth of measures in to assist business and industry as well to get through that period. And during that period of time, we also abolished the city centre levy, which is a really good outcome for our community and our city centre businesses and property owners. I would like to also draw attention to the 42 events and conferences that we provided funding for through the Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program. And this generated $40 million worth of economic benefit to our region. Approved concessions for our for 6 new developments through our facilitating development policy in the Mackay region, and a combined estimate of $86.86 million with an estimation of 155 construction jobs. But I think one of the key highlights in the development services in the economy area is the 3,144 new lots that have been approved in the last 12 months. We have signed 744 survey plans and 849 development applications. I don't think we've seen development applications for that amount since probably 2012-13 year when things were in boom time. And of course the 1,672 planning advice handed out by our officers. So for me, I think the report is a great summary of the activities of the council. It is open and transparent. It's a great read, and I would encourage all the community to have a look. And if you don't want to read the whole entire report, take the snapshots right at the front, because that paints a picture for a great year that we've had.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mayer, speaker against. Any other speakers? Councillor Jones speaking for.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I just wanted to say thank you to Mark and the staff, because the one thing I noticed was there were so many familiar staff faces in the report. And it's a great way to show some of our shining stars that take pride in what we do, and you know, they've been recognised in our corporate documents. Page 226, I noticed on one of the things that our director has mentioned, just basically the rates that our ratepayers supply us with is some of the funds that we need to achieve what we have in this report. Over the last 12 months. But in addition, I'd like to give a shout out to the federal and state governments for the extra funds in allowing us to be able to do 65 major projects over the last 12 months. On a more serious note, towards the end of the document, the Queensland Audit Office have their recommendation or their letter there. And under the heading Responsibility for Councillors for the Financial Report, I often wonder why, Your Worship, we have to spend so much time reading these reports, but from council, you know, it's our responsibility. That's what we're here to do. Here's a great example, and I'd just like to read it out if I could, Your Worship. The Queensland Audit Office state that councillors are responsible for the preparation of the financial report that gives a true and fair view in accordance with the Local Government Act 2009. It states that it is a councillor's role to enable the preparation of the financial report, and that it's free from material misstatement, whether it's fraud, due to fraud or error. But it also mentions that councillors are responsible for assessing the council's ability to continue as a going concern. And I think that that's just a pertinent point to remind ourselves, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Are there other speakers? Councillor Bonaventura speaking for.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I'd only just mention one, and Councillor May says there are very many there, and I do agree, encourage people to read it. But to me, I look at the high point of the annual report, and I would have to say was our assistance to the community groups through our COVID assistance grants. 228 community groups received over $900,000 in funding to stay afloat during a difficult 2020. And Your Worship, in the first half of this year, I, like yourself, probably attended many community group AGMs, and most of their financial reports show how important that money was to keeping their head above water. So, yeah, a very good report.
It is. Well said, Councillor Bonaventura. And you're exactly right. Everyone that I've been to has complimented the council because that's the only thing that kept them afloat, and a lot of those ones for this last year. So well done. It was a great report and a great use of that fund that we did throughout this year. So if there's no further speakers, I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to the Development Services. 11.4.1 is the Mackay Region Planning Scheme 2017 major amendments. This was a very long document. 1,000 odd pages. I guess you've read every one. But we've had several briefings. We've been well briefed on this in terms of this particular administrative amendment coming through to the Council for adoption today. Before we ask for questions, I'll ask the Director to actually do a little bit of a summary.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And it was a long report, so thank you for persevering. But I think it is a really good report, and this is the first major amendment that's a general amendment that has been made to the planning scheme since its adoption. And while there are some sort of more minor things tidying up, fixing some errors, creating alignment, there were some big things delivered as part of this amendment. So there were some changes to facilitate new and emerging industries like breweries and coffee roasting and some rural tourism, changes to the bushfire overlay, and the high impact industry buffers around Palmyra and the showgrounds were some of the key items. We have been through the process up to the point of completing public notification, and we did receive a number of submissions, and there is proposed to be amendments made in response to those submissions. So the purpose of this report is to present those changes to Council, get Council's endorsement, and there's a range of formal resolutions that we require Council to make for us to be able to proceed to the next step, which is submitting everything back to the state for the state's final endorsement.
Okay, thanks, Director. Other questions? Councillor May.
I just have one question in relation. I was reading through the submissions and what we took on board out of those submissions. There was a number of submissions that would have created too much of a change to the amendment. My question is there an opportunity to put a call out of expressions of interest first to gauge feedback before we actually formulate the proposed amendment from a council perspective? It seems like those people have gone to the trouble to make their submission, but because it would create, if we were to take it on board, would create more change than what we're allowed to. I understand that bit, but I'm just wondering whether that process is the wrong way around.
Yeah. So thank you, Worship. You're right. If we make any significant changes at this point, what it basically means is it puts the amendment back to sort of the start, I guess. The amendments that are reflected in this version or this major amendment have been accumulated over time. So if we have feedback, if something's raised by councillors, if we find something in the planning scheme, staff raise something, essentially strategic planning have been keeping a list, and that informed this. The process you've outlined where we would do sort of proactive engagement with community and industry to inform an amendment, that generally comes when we do our halfway point major review of the planning scheme, and that is where we would literally go out and do that more broad amendment as part of a more major review process. So that can really occur at any time, triggered by council, but that's sort of not the process we follow for this particular amendment.
So in relation to the submissions that we weren't able to accommodate, so you'll keep them on file to feed into the next amendment?
Yes, yeah, we keep a running list. So, Your Worship, we keep a running list of things that we need to look at as part of the scheme, so we'll continue to do that.
Thanks.
Other questions? So that we are absolutely, because this is a prescribed motion of council, so that we're absolutely in accordance with what is being adopted by council today under the Chapter 2, Part 4, Sections 18.3 and 18.4 of the Minister's Guidelines and Rules of the Planning Act of 2016. Council has to consider the properly made submissions, prepare consultants' reports, and shown in the attachment, and provide the consultation report to each person, which we've done. And as part of this motion today, the council decides to make a change to the major amendment as shown in attachment 1 to what we're adopting today, and attachment 2 in accordance with Chapter 2, Part 4, etc. of the Minister's Guidelines. and that the council considers that the changes continue to appropriately integrate and address the relevant state interests, and that the council considers that the changes made do not result in the proposed amendment being significantly different to the version released for public consultation, and that the council decides to give a notice of a request to adopt the proposed amendments to the minister in accordance with the guidelines. So that's basically what we're adopting today. We're all happy with that. Would somebody like to move then the adoption? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Councillor Englert.
Thank you, Worship. This is the first large general amendment to the scheme. It's designed, as the Director said, designed to facilitate new development opportunities like emerging industries to ensure the region remains competitive. We first got briefed on this August last year, and public consultation, taking into view the comments of the Deputy Mayor, who I personally agree with, having heard them now. Public consultation was conducted between April and May this year. It went to 35 business days, 11 submissions were received, 15 changes were proposed, which I think demonstrates that we took on board very well what those submitters had to say. And as this officer stated in the conclusion, a major amendment is required to ensure that the planning scheme remains contemporary and includes up-to-date information. The recommendation is long and very specific. I think the Mayor's made good comment on that, so I just want to support the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor May, speaking for.
Just very briefly, Your Worship, I really just want to draw attention to the enormous amount of work that the Director and her staff have put into preparing this amendment. The community consultation, the submission part of the process as well, and collating all of that information, I think is a great effort. You know, our people in the planning department are not always in the pleasurable side of business, and they have to and fro with development. But this has been a major undertaking and a major piece of work, and making sure that our planning scheme keeps pace with our changing community. So congratulations to the team.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. If there are no further speakers, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Congratulations, Director. Please pass on the Council's congratulations, as the Deputy Mayor said, to you and your team. Tremendous amount of work, and this just proves that what we're dealing with in our planning scheme, it's a living document, and it changes regularly on a month-by-month basis for minor amendments. This is our first major one, so well done. Thank you very much. 11.5.1 is a petition, the Sugarshed Road walkway that we received prior to this, and went to the Engineering Commercial Infrastructure region, and the response that we have under 11.5.1 now has been a fairly clear response. Ask the Director to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Worship. It's quite a comprehensive report, so I'll be very brief, but effectively the request for a footpath came around other issues around speeding in that area, so the priority for the footpath doesn't necessarily meet our priority, but we'll obviously look at that. But in parallel with this request was an approach from cyclists around that as a cycling route, so we undertook a safety analysis of that road, and there's a whole number of recommendations that we actually are looking to proceed with, and obviously referring to the Traffic Advisory Committee, which is scheduled to meet at the end of this month to actually make improvements. Otherwise, I will take questions.
Thanks, Director. Questions over this report, response to the petition? No? Okay, so once again, it is a comprehensive recommendation that's come out of this petition. Are there any questions around the recommendation, Councillor Bowman?
Just one, Your Worship. Just in relation to adopting these recommendations, will it be a long way away? I've had several phone calls from people within the Marriagee Yakapari Road, Sugarshed Road, should I say, in relation to reducing speed limits.
Okay. So, Director, in relation to the recommendation to reduce the speed limits, what's the time frame around that for us? How does that work from here?
Yep, through your worship. So obviously the endorsement here goes through the Traffic Advisory Committee. So then once that's endorsed through there, there's a process. I'd have to confirm the exact timing of when that would occur, and obviously leading up to Christmas, whether that's actually something that's going to occur before then or have to be implemented after. But I'm happy to come back and give an indication of time frame once it's been through the Traffic Advisory Committee.
Your Worship, just for the General Council, the next Traffic Advisory Committee will be on the 26th of November, so
right, okay.
It will obviously
so
be on the agenda for that.
Be quite relatively short. Okay, there's no further questions around that. Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Englert moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Englert.
No, Your Worship, I think the discussion is covered.
Yep. Okay, there's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried. Thank you. And the second petition that we had to deal with, the Stotts Road ceiling, and the response to that petition is obviously in the agenda. It's a fairly short response, but Director, do you wish to speak to this one?
No, again, very briefly, Your Worship. Obviously, we have a number of unsealed roads across the region, and a number of requests for those unsealed roads to be sealed. But based on our current hierarchy and priorities, there's no recommendation to proceed with sealing Stotts Road based on the petition to proceed.
Questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the adoption of the report from the officers? Councillor Mann moves, seconded by Councillor Green. Councillor Mann? Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Our org services, the legislative delegations. This is a perfunctory thing that has to come before council. I think there are minor changes. CEOs, or anything to say to this? No. Are there questions? Director, is there anything you need to say on this one?
No.
Okay, it's fairly perfunctory. So, if there's no questions, would somebody like to move the report's adoption then for the legislative delegations? Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Townsend seconds. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship, it's explanatory.
Okay, there's no discussion then. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. Now, the lease of land under 11.6.2 for the Telstra Corporation at Mackay Harbour. It's a small amount, the rental consideration of $16,000 per annum. Is there any questions around this? Councillor Jones?
Your Worship, I just noted on page, I think it's 1234, in the conclusion, it states that the move is going to provide an opportunity to enhance mobile telephone coverage on the shed tower for the harbour and surrounding areas. And as you know, I've had an interest in this not only up the valley but also in the Slade Point area because it's quite poor. So I guess I'm wanting to know whether or not this so-called surrounding areas is going to include Slade Point and we're going to have a better coverage in that area. If we're not, then what areas are they saying in the report that this is going to cover?
Are we able to answer that, Director?
No, I'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
From a technical perspective, yeah. Can only enhance, one would suspect.
I just want to know how far, Your Worship.
So we'll take that on notice and try and get that out
Thank you.
prior to the next meeting. Thank you. Any other questions? Other questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Green seconds. Councillor Jones?
Self-explanatory.
Okay, no discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Thank you. The operational plan quarterly report for the first quarter for 2021-2022. Director.
To say, Your Worship, it's the first quarter of the financial year. 94 of the actions are on track, including one that is complete. 7 are below target, which in the report provides an explanation. There's no concerns at this stage that any of the actions won't be met by the financial year, and 11 of the actions don't require reporting this quarter. So, happy to.
Thank you. Thanks, Director. Are there questions at all? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on, again, rough page 1259 under environment, the action is to develop future local coastal plans. I'm hoping that the delays with this one is because we're moving into a regional SEN. And I want to know, is that why the delays are there? Is it because of that? And if it is for that reason, then why are we continuing with local plans when a more consistent approach should be needed, like going on that journey for the regional SEN?
Yeah, I think that I understand the question, but I think the SEMP and the local plans are two distinctly different approaches that we need to take. But Director, are you able to address that?
Yes, Your Worship. And sorry, my agenda's not behaving, but so I can't.
Pages are not lining. That's okay.
No, it's not wanting to find it. But look, the delays that we're experiencing in that area are due to resourcing, and it is due to the impending restructure. So yeah, progress on the Serena Beach local coastal plan has been a lot slower than I would have liked. But yeah, that's the situation that we're in.
Further questions? No further questions. So would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Mann moves. Councillor Green seconds. Councillor Mann.
I won't talk for very long, Your Worship. There is lots of actions in there, as the Director's already pointed out, and I think given challenges we've had this year with staffing and all sorts of other things, to be only a few actions below target is due to there's a lot of hard work on behalf of staff that's gone into it. So I think that the delays are very minor in terms of the whole operational plan.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. There's no petitions to receive, no tenders, no notified motions, public participation I think we've had, and late business, councillors. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Just in light of laying my report on the table and knowing that in the last 18 months where councillors have reported back and the types of reports that have been all in very different formats, for future conferences, could councillors have a basic template to follow that would make all of our reports be a little bit more consistent so that nothing is actually left out? I'm just putting that forward in late business. You know, I note that we do have our, everybody's well aware of it, part of our agenda. We all get this that actually attaches to, you know, it's the reason our reports get into the agenda. So if something basic can be put together, it'd be great guidance for councillors in the future.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jones. Further late business? Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just one item of late business, and that is to wish our nominees at the Tourism Awards, the State Tourism Awards, which are being conducted on Friday night in Brisbane. There is a workshop, a tourism workshop on the Thursday that a number of councillors and staff are attending. We have a number of nominations this year for the Tourism Awards, and talking to my regional counterparts in Whitsunday and Isaac, we are going to have a very strong contingent at this year's Queensland Tourism Awards, so we wish all of those nominees every success.
Thank you very much, Councillor May. Any further late business? No further late business. Thanks, councillors. There's no confidential reports in this agenda, so thank you for your attendance and your discussion today. Thank you, CEO and directors. Declare the meeting closed.